Every time we do this startup, I feel like we are getting ready to launch a spaceship because it's like we're clicking over here, we're firing here, we're getting this locked in, we're locked up over here. Hey, it's blast off time. There you go. Folks, welcome to another episode of Blessing and Cursing. As you can see, we are significantly more comfortable than we have ever been. At least I am. We have
Me too.
We have acquired another couch. This couch has a little bit of special meaning to it, which we'll talk about here in a minute. But we got Joe back with us today. This is the last one of the year, so it's kind of, I don't want to say it's low effort, low energy, but it's going to be a lot more relaxed. We don't really have anything in mind. We're just going to talk about what God's done for us this year and talk about Christmas. Everybody loves Christmas, don't they? Did you have a good Christmas?
Yeah, had a good Christmas. We had our grandkids and Dave and everybody over, and they opened their presents, Christmas Eve.
Mm-hmm.
Had a good time. Gail made some kind of a ball out of saran wrap. She puts little gifts in it, And then you're either on a timer to pass it around or you roll dice, and she done that this year.
I've seen the dice one. That's what Nicole did for her kids for a while. So all the kids, instead of doing a pinata, well, they did pinata too, but they would do that ball. And, so them kids, man, they'd roll that dice and they'd throw that thing, they'd grab it real quickly, throw it again, the thing out there.
Now these here's adults.
Yeah. Well, we didn't let adults participate.
Yeah.
How many people did you have over there?
It's about 10, 11 of us.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Shoot, yeah. Philip, we had us a pretty good time. We went place to place. Nicole's kid's been sick, so instead of having a full-fledged Christmas over there, Dad and Mom came over to the house that morning, Christmas Eve morning, and they got the girls like a playhouse. That is like the size of their bedroom.
Really?
Big old thing. I mean, I could fit inside of it. Couldn't stand up in or nothing, but I could crawl up in there and play with them.
Hey, Dagan likes something like that too.
Yeah.
He likes stuff like that.
I told Savannah, I said, as soon as it gets warm, that thing's going outside. I'm going to anchor it to the ground so we're good to go.
Dagan built him a fort, out of a blanket, stuff like that.
Did you guys go anywhere else? Or I guess you're the patriarch, so you ain't really got nowhere else to go. They come to you, don't they?
Yeah, they come to us. We had a Christmas dinner, And,
we didn't do that this year. I think, well, of course, with Dad being sick, everybody was kind of, okay, we'll see you from a distance, kind of where you go.
Oh, that morning we was preparing dinner. I called Philip, had him to pray.
Mm-hmm.
Just me and Gail there, and we were preparing dinner. Me and Gail, we listened to Christian music, all morning, and
getting yourself spiritually prepared for the events to come.
Yeah,
that's not a bad idea.
Yeah,
surrounding yourself so you're bolstering up.
Because that was his. Actually, if it hadn't been for him being born that day,
right. Of course, we don't know if he was born December 25th or whatever it was.
No, but
here's the argument for that, because I hear this a lot from people. They say, well, Jesus wasn't born on December 25th. That's a pagan holiday. Let me tell you something.
Really? I didn't know
That's
that.
what they tell you. Let me tell you something. I don't know when he was born, but his birth was worth celebrating.
Absolutely.
So what better day?
Yeah.
And if you want to say the Christmas tree's pagan, well, I mean, it's a tree. I'm not worshiping a god. I'm just bringing a tree in my house.
Yeah.
Well, it's the action of it. So that's the same thing. You can go back. When Paul wrote his letter in Acts, he wrote, no, it wasn't Acts. It was one of the churches in Greece, probably Corinth. One of the Corinthians, I assume. Don't quote me on that. Paul wrote specifically about meat sacrificed to idols. Mm-hmm. And he said, have at it. Unless the Spirit tells you not to. And the implication being that if eating food sacrificed to an idol makes you feel like you're worshiping an idol, then don't eat it.
Mm-hmm.
If you can look past it and just see it as food, then have at it.
Yes.
So if bringing a tree into your house makes you feel like you're worshiping some pagan deity, then don't do it. Mm-hmm. If it doesn't, then have at it. At least that's the way I see it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how else to look at that. But we don't know when he was born. At least I don't.
No, I don't either in that.
Let's pick a day and enjoy it.
Yeah, absolutely.
That goes for everything. Anything you want to can be a pagan symbol. Steeples on churches, whatnot. Of course, Philip. So,
I reckon my cross is, ain't it?
Well, not necessarily. It's kind of turned into something, but that's a different conversation.
Okay.
So part of the men on Savannah's side of the family is they all gather at Cracker Barrel every Christmas Eve morning and eat breakfast together.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, with Dad coming over in the morning, I didn't get the chance to make it this year, but I guess, Philip, you went out there, didn't you?
Yes.
Anything worth mentioning happen out there while I was gone?
It's just good to see them.
It is. I guess that's kind of holidays. Really, on time everybody has an excuse to get together, to be able to see everybody, and I guess that was something that the Papaw had done for a while, right? Or how did they get started?
I can't even remember.
Man, you're the one that's been here longer. You're supposed to know all these things.
I know Kevin always does it, and I think he started it after Hobart left, but I can't remember how that got started.
Yeah. Anyways, something they can gather together and, have some meetings time beforehand. I guess it's a lot easier to have discussions without children and stuff running around. And it's the morning, so everything's kind of still calm, cool, and relaxed. And I guess we came down to your house with the rest of the family at about 2 o'clock or so. And, of course, they got 9 grandbabies now.
Yeah.
Working on number 10.
Mm-hmm.
He'll be here next year. And so we had 9 kids running around having a real good time.
You had many kids. We had people.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Kids are people.
Well, adults.
Yeah.
Adults.
Yeah. So, Phil, that's really got to bless your heart to see that you have that kind of generational following coming after you, coming behind you, and getting a chance to watch all these kids, grow up in front of your eyes like that, and be able to see them all gathered in one place, one mind, one accord style.
Yeah, it's a blessing and a curse together because you worry about them, and you worry about, will they find Christ and will they serve Him, and and will something bad happen to them, and all those kinds of things. But for the majority of the time, they are a blessing because you're getting to see them follow Christ or go to church or talk about Christ or even just living life, having fun, playing ball. I enjoy that too, but my goal is that they all accept Christ and follow Him.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, and so you did your part in that too, and that was what I want to bring up. So we talked this morning a little bit. Of course, service was kind of the same way. Not that the last service of the year isn't as important as the first, but it's just kind of let's talk today. And I talked about how when Christ was born, when the birth of Christ was on the wise, as they say, we believe he shed his godhood to become fully man, and in being fully man, he was able to live the perfect life and the opportunity that we had. And we hear about whenever they go to the temple in Jerusalem, I believe whenever he was 12 or 13, I can't remember the exact number, and
13.
They go for the festival for Passover, and as they leave, Jesus stays behind. Well, he spends his time in the temple. It says he's talking, asking questions, and he's doing a little bit of proselytizing. Well, whenever Joseph and Mary finally realized, hey, our son's not with us, and they turn back, which the first thing is, how do you forget your kid? But they made a whole movie series based off that.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't know Home Alone had godly principles in it, did you?
It probably does.
And so they come back and they talk to him, and they said, what are you doing? Do you not understand what, the fear that we had? We were so afraid for it. And he said, don't you know about my Father's business?
Mm.
It's easy to say, oh, well, he's God in the flesh, so of course he's going to know this. But he shed his godhood, so he was fully man at that moment. So how did he know what the Father's business was? It had to be because he had been in a spiritual home. He had a spiritual upbringing. He evidently had a pretty solid prayer life and some level of intelligence of that because he knew that's what he was doing.
I'd say Mary played a big part in that. She shared, her experiences,
Mm-hmm.
already. She probably shared the angel, coming to her.
Yeah. Well, if you go to if you read a little bit further in that chapter, the men tell Mary what Jesus was doing. It said she kept that in her heart. She remembered that from whenever he was younger. And so I'm sure the entire time Jesus has grown up, first off, it's clear that his parents were devout followers of God. That they performed the sacrifices, that they went, they prayed, they read, they did what they had to do, because that's how he knew.
Mm-hmm.
And so before we start opening up presents, all the kids were assembled together and they had their piles together, and Philip said, so who do we thank for this? Well, of course, the youngest one that could talk was like, me. Everybody chuckled and laughed at that. And he said, no, who do we thank for it? And they said, oh, Pop and GK. It's their house. They got the presents. No, hold up. So they said, Jesus.
Mm.
And so Philip got to explain, The only reason we do this is because this is a demonstration of the love of God. He gave us the best gift. We do our best to give gifts.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. I thought that was awesome.
Yeah.
My entire life is always just, here's presents. Talk about Jesus a little bit.
That's the way I was, when I was younger. It was all about presents.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the day before, we all opened presents. I told Gail Christmas Day, it's going to be all about Jesus. It's going to be all about praising Him. And like I said, we got the Christian music going and called Philip and had him to pray. And then everybody started coming in and everything, and we eat dinner. And we had started some conversations there. Now, all of my family is not followers of Christ,
Mm-hmm. I don't know anybody whose family totally is.
Yeah. But, somebody had spoken, when I won't mention no names, but if they watch it, they'll still know who I'm talking about because there wasn't that many there. But I had mentioned it, so it don't matter. But her husband is pretty sick, he's got cancer and everything, and he's I guess preparing,
Mm-hmm.
He's making quilts for his granddaughter and grandson. He's making one, it's got him and her on it. Then he's making the quilt that has him and his grandson on it.
So he's done setting his earthly affairs in order.
Yeah. And another person asked her, said he's scared, ain't he? And his wife answered yes, said he's scared. Well, it went on there, and it wasn't 2 or 3 minutes. Somebody else talked about somebody and said that they was scared about dying.
Mm-hmm.
Then here goes David. I'll mention David's name, David Deeble.
You can always mention your kids.
Yeah. He says, well, and here he is on Christmas Day. He's got a big old abscess tooth.
Mm.
And it looks like somebody beat the tar out of him,
Mm.
Eyes swollen shut and everything. He says, well, I'm kind of scared too, this abscess and everything. Well, I said, now you all know you don't have to be scared when you die. I said, Jesus, if you accept Him, back when before I was saved, I used to worry about dying all the time.
Oh, sure.
Now, it don't even hardly cross my mind, But whenever they started talking about dying and I'm scared of it, it hit something in me. I said, if you go to Jesus and ask Him to save you, give yourself over to Him and obey Him and follow Him, my obedience here lately ain't been so good neither, so I need to improve on that also. And I said that'll go away. If you're truly saved, that will go away. It just puts ease over you. And then, like Philip said, your kids, if you have your kids saved, that puts ease over you.
I think there is an ease, definitely, but I think
your kids and grandkids, because where they're going, and if you pass away before they do,
mm-hmm.
and you already know they're saved, you'll meet them one day.
I think there is a peace with it, but there is still, at least for me, I think it's kind of a wavering faith thing. Like right now, I can look at you and say, ready to go. But Peter also was able to look at Christ and say that He would defend him so he wouldn't be murdered.
Yeah.
Of course, we know Jesus handled the situation differently, told him to step aside, but Peter had every intention of standing up for God. We see once he was arrested, he denied Him 3 times. So part of me says, I can boldly say I'm ready to go when I'm ready to go, whenever He's ready for me. But I'm not sitting at death's door kind of thing.
Oh, no.
And so I think it will hit differently in that moment at the different times. You know, I'm not sick. I'm relatively healthy. I'm not, you know, I have no fear of death, but I can't say that I may not have a moment of weakness when the time comes. You know what I'm saying? Put it this way. You know, we talk about having no fear. You know, Scripture says to be not afraid. Fear not, most quoted thing in Scripture, said over and over and over again. But if there's a dog that's foaming at the mouth running at you, you're going to be a little bit afraid.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Of course, it means different things. Of course, we're not talking about that same kind of fear. But I think that's the real thing. But, again, that is a really good point to try and to steer them towards, of explaining how that fear can go away and how any fear that comes after is just a temporary thing instead of being something that controls you. Because you have that peace.
You know, I would be worried. Which I would say that I would be. There would be some kind of scaredness there. You know, nobody wants to die. You know,
Right.
you know there'll be some kind of scaredness there, but would get me is to my family that is not saved.
Mm. And that's always tough.
Yeah.
And, you know, so we can look at death as a very positive thing, because it is a very positive thing. But that doesn't mean we're still not going to grieve, or that we're still not going to miss our loved ones, or we're not going to have that pain of separation. And, you know, we know well and good that we do have that opportunity to meet again, that there is the great resurrection, that there is an eternity in heaven. But, you know, heaven seems light years away for us.
Yeah.
Because we've lived this short time here. But yeah, that's a good way to spin that around. Anytime someone talks about fear of death, you know, I talk about when I was a teenager, I used to stay up till 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning every night, terrified that I was going to die, just for whatever reason.
Oh yeah, I used to be that way also.
And I just could never sleep, and I always had this horrible fear of death, and it was never like, oh, am I going to die by being shot or sick or whatever it was. It was what happens next.
Yeah.
What's it going to be like? And the worst thing that I could imagine is being consciously aware, but it just being blank space. Like couldn't move, couldn't feel. I could just hear my thoughts, and that was the worst idea of death to me. Of course, that was pre-salvation, so I had no idea what I was thinking either way around that. But I was just talking to somebody this morning who's in the process of having a loved one pass on, and everybody's informed. They're well aware. They're spiritually sound, so they do see it as a passing on, not a loss. Because that's one of the things we try and talk about is you didn't lose a loved one, like you know where they're at. You didn't lose them like you lose your house keys. It's just they're separated from you right now. And even knowing that, even having that spiritual mindset, it is still difficult. But that's something that, honestly, it is a blessing to me. I'm very thankful that I don't have experience in.
Yeah. Now, with the little Joe, when he passed away, I wasn't saved at the time, but I know little Joe was. And I know he'd been baptized, and I had heard God's word before, and I know what all it meant, but I just hadn't accepted Christ yet, I know little Joe was going to a better place, and that's what kept me from, I guess, grieving like everybody else does, some people would ask if you could have a chance to have your son come back, would you? And I'd say, absolutely not. I know where he's at. As much as I'd love to see little Joe, I know where he's at. And then, that fight I was having with Jesus the whole time, I knew that I would never see little Joe unless I got my act right,
What do you think, knowing that and having the faith that your son was with the Lord and believing
or
that,
going to be, ever how it works out.
Timing doesn't matter. But having that belief, what do you think prevented you from following in that belief yourself? What do you think kept you hanging back for so long?
just the sin in me. Hey, it ain't easy to accept Christ. Hey, I was out doing the stuff I like to do. I was out drinking, doing the stuff I like to do.
Mhm.
You know, and that's the reason everybody don't get saved. Their other idols or whatever you want to say they worship. They rather do other stuff than worship God.
Mhm.
You know.
There was a verse that I had read earlier that really reminded me of this. If I can find it, it may be worthwhile here. Oh, here it is. In John 12, starting in verse 37, though he had done so many miracles before them, yet they believed not on him. We see that a lot. We see people that will acknowledge and believe and experience these miracles of God in whatever facet it is, but they still don't believe in him. They pass it off as just a passing glance. There are people that have been miraculously cured of illnesses that don't really think it's from God. That the saying of Isaiah the prophet might be fulfilled, which he spake, Lord, who hath believed our report, and to whom hath the arm of the Lord been revealed? Therefore they could not believe, because that Isaiah saith again, he hath blinded their eyes and hardened their heart, that they should not see with their eyes, nor understand with their heart, and be converted, and I should heal them. These things said Isaiah when he saw his glory, and spake of him. Nevertheless, among the chief rulers also many believed on him, but because of the Pharisees they did not confess him, lest they should be put out of the synagogue, for they loved the praise of men more than the praise of God. And so there's a lot to unpack in that little section there, but what you were talking about reminded me of that, of these men believed Christ. They believed who he was, who he said he was, what he did, but they wouldn't proclaim it because of the people around them. And so that begs the question of, did they really believe if they weren't willing to stand up for it and proclaim it? What do you think?
They didn't really believe if they didn't stand up and accept him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What is your thoughts on that, Philip? Because it says they believed in what he did, what he said, who he said he was, but they weren't willing to proclaim it because they were afraid they were going to be excommunicated from the synagogue, which basically means they weren't going to be allowed back in the temple.
Having belief in something and having faith in something is two different things.
Yeah.
Yes. So that's one of the things, I say, not often, but I do say quite a bit, there's a big difference in believing and following.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because of scriptures like this, because it's very easy to say you believe in something and then do the complete opposite.
Mm-hmm.
And there is true belief, and I believe true belief is active. It involves action. It involves following. That doesn't mean that the following is what saves you. It is the belief. Mm-hmm. It is the faith. But I think a lot of people fall into the believing but not following category.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if that is failing on the church or the family or what it is, but you do meet a lot of people that are able to talk about God in such a positive way, and they talk about memories that they have in churches or with family members or so and so, but that's as far as it really gets. And so they have this belief without following. You'll have people that are, leaders in the church, teachers, preachers, proselytizers, and proclaimers that never take that step of following. And I think Jonathan's illustration of the chair is awesome in that.
Yeah.
Because you can know the ins and outs of the chair, but if you don't sit in the chair, it's doing no good.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so that makes sense. I think I was kind of in that same boat with a different scenario of, I grew up with a grandmother that talked about God all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Taught me prayers, taught me who he was, but I never learned the key of the active of the belief.
Well, where I was talking about my obedience,
Mm-hmm.
I believe I shied in that, that's what me and God is working on now. Is I want to be more active for him, and if I know there's something he wants me to do, I just don't. I've just not stepped up yet, or you know.
Everybody's something looks different.
Yeah.
I think when the church says everybody has a job within the body and it's you got to figure out what it is and you've got to do that. I think everyone expects there to be a not so much a title for the sake of a title, but a title so that way they know what they're doing.
Well, you know, it could be the least little thing, you know.
Well, that's what I'm saying, but I think people expect one day God to like come down and be like, "Oh, you're the janitor," or "You're, whatever it is." So hey, at least you know what it is. Not so much that, "Oh, well, I want to be this or that." It's just give me direction. And I think for some people, there's not a specific thing. It's just to be available when you can be available.
Yeah,
When he
just
says.
acting on anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which Philip and I have both told you that so far you're fulfilling your role in our lives very well of helping us to study, to improve, because you ask those questions.
Well, you know, that's all okay and good, you know, but
You feeling unfulfilled by it?
the more I could do, you know,
I'm not saying that's the limit.
I don't know if that'd be work based. That wouldn't be work based, would it?
I don't think you're basing your salvation on doing work. I think you just have a desire to do the work.
Yeah.
One thing that I really love about this little group we've got here within our circle is I don't hear outside of our group people that are just openly like, man, I'm horrible at such and such. You're talking about your obedience hanging up. Me and Philip have been talking about prayer for the past month. It's been awful. It's been lacking.
Yeah.
And I don't see that from other podcasts or other, people that produce media out there.
We can always improve. You know, we won't be like Jesus till we meet him face to face, you know.
Mhm.
But we can still always improve.
Would you think it could be a negative thing, us talking about our shortcomings?
No.
You don't think that to someone that's not spiritually minded, they would look at what we're doing and consider us obsolete from talking to them because we're not perfect?
No, surely not, would.
I hope not. I'm just asking you questions, buddy. I hope not. I hope that people do see how we talk and
They
realize
ain't
that
none of us obsolete.
that's the
You
thing.
know,
I want to be real.
I was just like Cam. You know, I was in the same boat as they was. I accepted him, you know, to follow him and tried to do my best to follow him,
Mhm.
you know, have faith in him. And, you know, that's what he expects of us. But we have to accept him first. You have to let that other stuff go. The stuff that's holding you back from accepting him, you have to let it go. The drinking, the running around,
The sin.
yeah, any of it.
Who was the first people that got to see Jesus outside of his family?
His, no,
So the popular Christmas story is the wise men. That's just wrong.
oh, I thought you went, I don't know what I was thinking. I was thinking after he rose.
Oh, no. I'm talking about after the birth.
Yeah, the wise men,
They weren't. Wise men
the
didn't.
sheep, the shepherd.
The shepherds.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. I think that the Christmas story has here you go, Stephen. Stephen's always throwing in good stuff. I think that the Christmas story that we tell paints a bad picture. Because the Christmas story that we hear is that Jesus was born in a manger because there was no room at the inn.
Mm-hmm.
And we have this idea of the manger just being like a shed out back. Not that it was a literal cave that animals were sleeping like
Yeah,
physically
yeah.
next to them in, but that the shepherds were the ones that the angels came to.
Mhm.
And that's significant. The wise men did follow a star that was sent by God, specifically to guide them. But the shepherds got the host of heaven. It said the angel appeared, spoke to them, and said, "Hey, your king is here. Let's go see him." And then, all around them, a heavenly host came and began to sing and to proclaim glory to Christ. What does that mean to you? Why do you think they would go to shepherds over anybody else?
That was his people.
Well, they were all his people, but I think, personally, it was the same reason that his disciples were fishermen. Because it was common, everyday people.
Yeah. The people he's wanting to reach the most. Well, how can I? Because he's wanting to reach everybody.
Mm-hmm. I think it was the people that were going to accept him the fastest.
Yeah.
So when we tell the Christmas story, we make it seem like these wise men were just 30 minutes away
Yeah.
and saw the star and followed it, and then boom, they popped up on the Christ child and were like, "Here, let's shower you with these gifts."
Mm-hmm.
And every time we see the wise men, how do they look whenever we see these scenes?
They're all dressed up.
They're fancied up. They got they got crowns on usually. They're obviously bringing gold. They're extravagant.
You can tell they're upper class.
So that makes it seem like you've got to be somebody to come and worship the king.
Yeah.
That's a horrible way. They weren't there
Absolutely.
that night.
Yeah.
They probably weren't there for months to a year after. Because
Yeah.
the star appeared when he was born, and they had to do some traveling to get to him. So God came to the everyman. God, I mean, because shepherds wouldn't have been learned.
Mm-hmm.
If they did math, it was just how many sheep have I got? 99. I'm missing one. Let's go find it.
Yeah.
When Christ picked his disciples, the first 4 were fishermen, and so they, again, math would have just been simply, this many fish is this much denarii, whatever the wage was. If they did know how to read and write, it was because they had gone to like temple school just to be able to learn to read and write the Word of God.
We ain't nobody no way. We're just earthly people until we accept Christ. And well, I guess you could put baptizing in there. He washes your whole body. You get a whole new body.
Mm-hmm.
And you just seem to think different.
I just don't want unbelievers to think that you've got to be somebody for God to accept you.
No, people knows me watching this knows I ain't nobody no way. And you don't.
God
Jesus accept anybody.
He makes us into somebody.
Yeah.
Can't stand it no more.
I was wondering if he would come out here.
Yeah, so when they came was probably a couple of years later, but the idea is that you see when they came and who they were, they humbled themselves,
Mm-hmm.
and the humble is who he comes for, not the proud.
Mm-hmm.
It's humbling yourself is what, and that's what brings up this couch. That couch came off my front porch.
I was about to say, I'm glad you guys came
And
in and talk
so
about that.
you have to humble yourself before God.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of movies, I think of Indiana Jones, and he, a penitent man, and he bends down and the saw goes over his head. And so the same thing, a penitent man, a humble person is the only person that can make it to Christ.
Mm-hmm. Which explains why he didn't appear to the king, and the king had no idea of what that meant.
Yeah, and we know the age and how long it took him to get there, because when they did come swing by, and Herod was trying to find this child, and then when he put the decree out, how old was the children he were trying to kill?
He gave him a time span.
Yes,
Yeah.
he knew it was sometime in this window, and that's how long the star had been showing.
So something I read about that earlier today too that kind of intrigued me. It was specifically a decree for Bethlehem and the area around.
Mm-hmm.
That might have been like 15 kids. That really, because Bethlehem really wasn't
Small area.
a huge type of city
Can
at that
anything
time.
good come from Bethlehem?
And so we see, of course, the wise men would have been there before the flee to Egypt, because they kind of gave the warning, hey, go to Egypt.
Absolutely.
Something else I read was, we think of, Jews in Egypt, they don't really necessarily get along after the slavery. Egypt had a huge Jewish population at the time because it was something they were familiar with. They were welcomed there. It wasn't like an outcast society. They were able to blend in and hide very easily. If there hadn't been a Jewish population in Egypt, they would have stuck out like a sore thumb, and Herod would have been able to find them.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, they waited however long it was till Herod died. Then they came back home to Nazareth. But the prophecies of where the Messiah was going to come out of have been something that the world has used to trip up the Bible all over the place. How can one person come from 3 different places? Born here, escaped to here, came out of here, grew up here. Joe, where'd you grow up?
Michigan,
What city?
Detroit.
Detroit.
Yeah.
Were you born in Detroit?
Oh yes.
Okay, so you can say you were born and raised in the same place.
Yeah.
Were you born and raised in the same town?
No.
No. But you don't say the town you were born in.
No.
You say the town you was raised in.
Mm-hmm.
I was born in Oak Ridge.
When somebody says, "Where are you from?" I say Wytheville, Virginia. Where were you born? I say Charleston, West Virginia.
Yeah. And so that's kind of that same thing. Where are you from? He was from Nazareth, born in Bethlehem. Spent a little time in Egypt. probably went back, once or twice from that point. I don't know, man. I've really just been struggling this year specifically with, I want to get into the mindset of the lost. And there's some people that, of course, I've had experience with that I can relate to and I can see kind of where they're coming from. But the broad term, I want to know what it is, how someone can have information, knowledge, and an understanding of where their son is when they pass on, but not themselves receive that.
Mm-hmm.
Or, we talk about Gail. We talk about Gail. I'm sure she wouldn't mind.
Yeah,
How she had seen your transformation, firsthand seen it, seen how your whole world changed, and saw how that manifested in your home, and had come here and had sat under preaching and teaching for quite a while,
Yeah.
and still was holding back on that.
Mm-hmm.
And getting into that mindset really intrigues me because I think that's where a lot of people are. And there's a lot of people, just like Gail, that will sit in a church for years
Mm-hmm.
and on the face look like a believer, but be just as lost as anybody else.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's just turning loose of them worldly idols.
Mm-hmm.
Turn yourself over to Him.
There's
Let Him take care of it.
there's the 2 big stumbling blocks. It's either it's all fantasy, it's not real, there's no point, it's nonsense, or it is real but I'm not good enough, or there's something that's in me that is preventing me from being this.
I think those that say it's not real, they ain't heard the true gospel. They
They may have heard it, but they've never experienced what that is.
there's some, I don't know if I should say this or not.
I don't think we've ever withheld anything on this program.
Go
And
ahead.
There's some preachers I could listen to and not getting nothing out of it.
sure.
But then there's some I do. And it may not be the preacher itself. It may just be the service they're on, what they're preaching on,
I can tell you from first-hand experience that they can't all be winners. Sometimes I'm not gonna obey quite as well and not quite fulfill what God has for us. I'm sure the same goes for any leadership position.
Mm-hmm.
But there are certain people that have different styles that speak differently to different people, and then there's some people that just plain old aren't doing it.
You can tell, you can see the people that's doing it. You can see it, and you can just see it inside them. You know what I'm talking about.
Sure.
You can just see it.
You're saying that the spirit in you bears witness with the spirit in them.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what you're saying.
Yeah.
Of course.
So tell us about this couch, Joe.
This couch, I guess about 1.5 years ago, 2 years, I don't know the exact time, but I was saved on this couch. This is one that sat on Philip's front porch.
This is the couch that started the podcast.
It is.
Is this the Couch Start podcast? Now, you had done started it before I ever started church.
Yeah.
We had, but the idea behind it, the conversations, took place predominantly on this couch.
Well, yeah. Yeah, because I go back to the early ones, and I believe you had done a podcast on this on a real early one, or just inside your house.
We done one just inside the house, I
Yeah.
think. That was, or we had attempted
That was
one.
on Kim's couch.
Yeah.
And that was horrible. And then I'm sitting on it during the one where Austin's fighting the cicadas, but
Before
you can't see it.
Before anything was ever recorded, we would sit outside a good portion of the time and have these discussions on the couch.
Before there
And
wasn't.
then we
like
done the podcast on it when you had the
That's what he's talking about with the
the
skates.
thing at your house.
That's what I'm talking about.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, that's when Austin was fighting the cicadas.
So
Oh,
paint us a
okay.
picture, Joe. What was it leading up to? What was the conversations like? What was Philip like? How did the Spirit move? How did you feel that day?
Did I get saved?
Yeah. No, the day of the cicadas.
Well, it was just awesome. Just something come over me, and well, I didn't know this a couple days ahead of time. I didn't know that maybe a week ahead of time when Philip come to my house.
Mhm.
You know, the day he asked me to go to church, I know that I was going to accept Jesus Christ. That might have been the day I got saved. I don't know exactly the day I got saved.
I don't think a lot
We
of
talk
people
about
really
that
do.
sometimes because sometimes I think people think of it as an event, and some people think of it as a time period of maybe days or weeks or months, and I understand both concepts, and I think there is a moment where you realize the decision you've made. But you probably, when I asked you that day, you had probably already made up because he didn't force that on you. What you had done is subconsciously made that decision in your mind that I'm going to have to start following Christ. This just ain't working.
Now, the day on the couch when I asked Philip and Kim, well, Kim was in the house, and I asked Philip,
Yeah, sleep in the bed.
get her up and come out and pray. And that's when I verbally, by mouth, asked.
Confessed.
Yeah, confessed.
Mhm.
But now, before that, I knew that I was going to,
So two really good schools of thought on that. One comes from Jonathan, one comes from Anna. Jonathan has the mindset of it's the moment that you actually make that movement to go to the altar, so to speak.
Mhm.
It's not the going to the altar, but it is that moment that you decide to take that stand.
and see that day that Philip asked me to come to church, that was my step towards the altar.
Right.
Mhm.
And so
You turned your gaze toward him.
Mm-hmm.
and that was the time you made the decision, I'm going to do this. Anna's mindset is more so it's kind of a developing thing because you're going to have the curiosity, you're going to have the learning, you're going to have that, and then one day it's just kind of going to be, oh, I believe God. I believe this now. She said she doesn't know the day. I don't know.
Well, see,
I have an idea.
and I believe I can see that too.
Mhm.
Look what a learning process I went through.
I do think
60 years, and then
I personally do think it's a process.
Mhm.
I don't know. I think there is the moment.
The moment of confession.
Yes, because I think you've got to have the curiosity for it. You've got to be pulled, and you have to receive the pulling. You've got to learn. You've got to develop, and then you're going to make that choice, and then the confession comes with that.
I believe you have to hear the Bible before all that, though.
Yeah,
You have to hear the word.
Yeah.
there's no doubt about that. Scripture tells us pretty explicitly it has to. But I think we can see that even in the disciples. So they were called. They felt the call. They followed the call.
Mhm.
And of course, it was a physical, hey, come follow me, as opposed to the Holy Spirit, but it's the same guy. And then they learned, they developed, they had some kind of back and forths, and then there was that moment of, this is it.
Yeah.
And you could argue, I would argue, that salvation came the day of Pentecost for them.
Mhm.
Because that was the time where everything shifted from denying Christ to being martyred for Christ on that day.
Yeah, they were real wishy-washy before him.
And
Because he says he caused us before we were ever born. And so, you know, he has that calling for us, and it's just whether we step into that or not, whether we obey that calling. And when you do, it just, you know, it's that feeling we get that everything seems right.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's what he had created us to do all along, and we just either was ignorant of it or knew about it and was fighting. Like you say, it's kind of two different. There's people that's kind of ignorant of, just don't really know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't mean stupid, I mean ignorant
Yeah.
of the fact of what's going on with Christ. Or you think you know what's going on with Christ and you're rejecting it.
yeah, you're rejecting it.
Yeah.
See, that's what me and Gail did. Me and Gail rejected it.
Wasn't that you didn't know.
No, we knew.
Yeah.
Or at least I know.
You
I
just
know.
wanted
I
to
don't
do
know
what you
about
wanted to
Gail.
do.
Yeah, yeah. I still wanted that.
Life.
What I call that old good stuff, you know.
Mhm.
But that stuff ain't no good.
Temporary life.
Yeah, this here that worldly. I wish I
Worldly.
world.
Worldly.
Yeah, worldly.
For
That
somebody from
rolling
Detroit,
stuff.
you've got a thick Southern accent,
You do.
buddy.
Hey, I know it. That's what. I know it. I'm really from Detroit, though.
Accents are like my favorite thing about meeting new people. But that's neither here nor there. Yeah, I think that's kind of where it's at. And I don't think, you said talking about everything kind of feels right, like it's falling into place. I think until you're ready to make that shift, it's going to feel the exact opposite.
Mhm.
So like when we talk today, you'll say that if I want to do something, I want to do the opposite, because if I want to do it, that means it's not good. It doesn't feel good at first.
Right.
And that's what you said, repenting's hard. Repenting hurts.
Mm-hmm.
Because you've got to really lay some stuff out there for that to happen.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh, in the moment of obedience, you're terrified.
Yeah.
But
I don't think the church does a good enough job telling people about that.
no.
It's completely normal.
Pretty
and-
much every time that I have been obedient, I have been terrified.
Yes.
But after it happens, I'm like, yes, this was God's will.
Hmm.
And it's a feeling that you can't explain. There's not words for it.
No. I would almost describe it like we used to do cliff jumping. And you're up there and you're looking down over that water. It's 20, 30, however deep it is, and it's a lifetime away, and you're tensed up.
Mhm.
And it's 5 minutes. You're sitting there shaking. Once you jump, it's exhilarating. It's amazing. You hit the water and it's great. But God is so much more so,
Yes.
because it's so much more terrifying. And I think for me the hardest part of repentance is looking at my core, really who I am, of who this flesh is, of what I've done, what I desire. Of where my intent is, and to lay that out there, and to quit lying to myself, quit lying to God, and to say, this is me.
Mhm.
Please take this away. That's so terrifying. But after that, well, that's gone. You've been
Mhm.
washed clean.
And once you accept Him, and something approaches you like that in your past, you can identify it just like that,
Mhm.
and you can turn it away. God, you turn back towards God instead of turning back towards that.
Mhm.
And stuff like that, for me, still yet approaches me about every day,
Mhm.
and I can spot it, and I just turn the other way. I turn towards God.
Anybody that tells you that temptation goes away lies to you.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if they don't have temptation, it's because they never turned that temptation over.
I believe that's true because, I believe there's temptation every day of some sort.
Yeah.
It don't have to be this way wild.
So I tell people about this all the time. I dipped quite a bit before I came to knowledge of the Lord.
Oh, no.
And-
see, there's something.
And not that the tobacco itself was sinful, but the hold that it had over me was.
Yeah.
Well, when I prayed and repented of that addiction, not the tobacco, but the addiction of it, God made me sick to my stomach around the smell of the tobacco now.
That's
So,
what He's doing to me
It
now.
doesn't matter what flavor, scent, whatever it is, can cracks open, my mouth waters, I want it, I get near it, smell it, get sick to my stomach. God blessed me with that.
Yeah.
The temptation is there, but He gave me the tool to overcome it.
He's doing that to me now. I quit it here a while back. He's saying, okay, now, boy, you can't do it on your own. You ain't even going to be able to put it in your mouth. And it does. It makes me sicker than dog now.
I can't even have gum that smells like it, and I'm out. But see, that's one of the glories. But now, with other things like alcohol, the sick to my stomach's not there anymore. It's still, I could go back to how I was before, and there's a good part of my flesh that wants to go back to that.
I don't even much crave alcohol no more.
Well, there you
It's
go.
it's that snuff for me.
Yeah, so now you got the tobacco. I've still got that.
But he's making it to where I can't even dip it now. So
He provides for us.
oh yeah,
He
showing
he
me.
leaves us some thorns, so that way we understand our position. But he gets rid of some things for us because he does love us, and he wants us to have, he wants us to be able to go forward. And I think it's truly something. When you think about the intricacies of God, it's easy to talk about big picture stuff. It's easy to even talk about but to think about the finite details of God, that He loves us enough to give us this, to take this away, to make us able to succeed without being prideful. And as soon as we're prideful, He takes something else from us.
Even Megan, Megan ain't turned towards God yet. But since I've been saved, I was in another room and I heard her tell Gail, said, Papa's changed since he's been going to church, ain't he?
That's a good testimony.
That's
That's a good testimony.
And she's watching, ain't she?
Of course she's watching.
the best
The
way to
world
teach
watching.
somebody is having them watch you.
Oh yeah,
But that's also something to remember, people's watching you.
oh yeah.
So David said something this morning in
Oh, yeah.
Sunday school that had never crossed my mind. I don't know if it crossed yours or not, Philip. Because he's, the program we're getting into and the things we're fixing to get involved in, it's something new for us, at least, on this level. But I guess he's been involved with things like this before, going through it himself. And I had never considered the thought of going to one of these meetings, of sitting down with somebody and then them trying to, coax you into going and having a beer with them after getting out of a rehab program. That never occurred to me. My first thought was no. But then I was like, but would I say no in that moment? Because here I have
You're
somebody.
trying to befriend this person.
Yeah, because everything to everybody, right? So where does that line cross? At what point can we say this action that has the potential to be sin, but itself is not sinful? Having a glass of wine is not sinful. The excess is. At what point do we? And that's not that example. Just for anything. At what point do we say this isn't becoming everything to everyone for their need? This is succumbing to my own temptations.
What's that Dr. Nurse thing, that statement that was in that book? Do
The
no harm?
Hippocrates.
Yeah.
Do good, but at least do no harm.
Yeah, I think it's right there.
Yeah.
I think it's that if you're doing good and no harm, that's the breakover point. Because, and of course, God's law stands above
Sure.
any of that. But I'm just saying, and I think if you're following God's law, you're not going to break that. But it's just a good human way of looking at it, I guess you could say, is am I doing good without causing harm?
Yeah.
To yourself or to them.
Absolutely.
Because that's the thing too. It may be, that may be something that humanizes you. Because we talk about whenever you're in that caretaker versus victim mentality, there's always going to be that power struggle, and they want you to be human. They want to see you as imperfect.
Yeah, they want
how
to flip
imperfect
the
you can
script.
be. Yeah.
They want you to be the one that is. They want
Bad
you,
guy.
be the bad guy too.
So I recently went to a friend's wedding a couple months back, and they had in between. It was a nice wedding. In between the wedding ceremony and the reception, they had cocktail hour, and I was like, what am I supposed to do? And part of me was like, I may just kind of go wander off, but I was like, no, all my friends are over here, so I'm going to talk to them. And Brother Denard was walking around there with us, and it was you had the option of red or white wine, or some kind of vodka drink, some kind of whiskey drink. Well, he's walking around with a clear glass full of dark Coke. I thought, like, oh, you got a Coke and whiskey. He's like, you don't know about this Coke Zero. And it was just straight up Coke in a glass. But he was able to walk amongst, to talk, to have this information, to be able to share with kids that he's watched grow up his entire life.
Right.
We were on there. I was like, that's such an awesome way to look about that. He wasn't saying, "Oh, I need to go over here and not be associated." It was, "I can be with them without being a part of them," kind of thing, and have that conversation. And I don't think if he had had the one glass that it would have done anything, to him. I don't know his tolerance level, but
Right.
the fact that he was able to be there with that was really encouraging to me. And we got to sit there and have a little conversation with a bunch of people that, I would love to see in church, and I know he would love to see him in church too. So that was really cool.
I know people that like won't eat, let's say Mexican, because I don't know of any, if there is any, a Mexican restaurant that doesn't serve alcohol.
Taco Bell.
A Mexican restaurant that doesn't serve alcohol. But you know what I'm saying? I mean,
Yeah.
I know people that will not, and it's not because they're attracted to the alcohol. They say it's because of their testimony.
Right.
And I understand that to a point, but if you present yourself as being, this hierarchy, this priest parading around, as Christ talked about, with your dress and your loud prayers and all this stuff, and you're saying that I'm so much better than you, that just don't go well with trying to share the gospel, and that's not who Christ was. We're supposed to be called Christians by other people.
Mhm.
Other people are supposed to call us Christians. America calls themselves Christians. We're not supposed to do that. They didn't call themselves Christians. Other people called them Christians because they were acting like their master.
And they said it in a very bad way.
Well, they were saying, in essence, they were saying,
Bunch of these
you're
Christians
fixing
running around
to,
here."
you're fixing to get killed just like your master did because you're acting just like he did.
Yeah.
What an honor, right? But they didn't say, okay, this is the First Christian Church of Rockwood,
Yeah.
and put Christian on the outside of a building that they're meeting in. No.
I think that that mentality is really missing out on a great potential tool. Because to be able to be in the presence of, but not be overcome by
Right.
something, shows the power that God has given you, the power to overcome. And if there's nothing that Christ gives us, it is the power to overcome sin, our own sin nature. And so, your daughter's favorite food, if she could, she would have Mexican every single meal that she could.
Well, you did about 4 times a week.
I do my best not to, but she loves it. And so we're able, having had this mutual experience, to go there and I've not really, honestly, been tempted a whole lot. Of course, you see something walk by every once in a while, you're like, that looks pretty good.
Sure.
But there's never been like I've got to get out of here, I'm going to lose this.
Right.
See, and that's just it. It's God inside you. You know what? You take somebody that ain't following God, they'll drink and drink and drink and drink all night long. You take a person that's following Jesus, he walks into a bar. I don't know what he's doing walking
It's
into a
starting to sound
bar.
like a joke.
I don't know what he's doing walking into a bar, but he walks amongst people that is drinking. That's like my snuff. That may not be a sin to nobody else, but inside me, that's sin to me.
Sure.
As soon as you walk in that bar, if you pick up a beer, inside you would tell you that's wrong, or it'll tell you drink it, and then it'll tell you when to stop. And unsaved people don't have that option.
True.
They don't know when to stop. You take a person following God, he shouldn't. It's all how the Spirit reacts in him, all what God tells him. And it's all what God thinks that person can obtain.
I think there's a fine line, though, when it comes to things of addiction. Like if you had a propensity for getting drunk on Bud Light, God's probably not going to say, "Here, have a Bud Light," but just the one, because it's such a slippery slope of inebriation.
Yeah, he'll probably take it if you follow him,
Sure.
if you obey
That sure
him,
be
you'll
no
probably
right off the
turn.
bat, yeah.
You'll probably turn plumb away from it. See, that's my problem with snuff. Although it's, some people may not even think of that as a sin, but I put that on myself. That's my own.
Because it had control over
Yeah,
me.
Yeah, and that's sin to me.
Let's send everybody.
Yeah.
And so, with that, I liked beer and I liked whiskey specifically. Well, I told you guys just a few months ago I had a glass of wine and no issues at all. I didn't go after a third, fourth, fifth, second. I didn't keep pursuing that. I feel that I feel like the Spirit has given me control over that aspect. Now, I've not ventured out and went and got another Bud Light because to me that was it. That's the slippery slope.
Yeah.
And I still don't drink, even if I drink wine, I'm not drinking every single day, even if it is a glass, because I know how quickly that can escalate.
Yeah.
And so, again, I don't think that if you're a meth addict, God's going to say just a little meth. It's okay.
Yeah,
just
no.
one hit's fine.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. Yeah.
I just didn't want people to go out there and say,
I
well, as long as
hope I
do a
didn't
little, we're
mean-
fine.
I hope I didn't come over saying
You
like
didn't,
that.
you didn't, but an addict is going to take anything they can to get it to their advantage because I know I would.
Yeah.
Yeah, when David said that this morning, he said, you got to watch out because they'll definitely try and, get you to have a beer with them. I was like, I couldn't imagine getting out of a rehab program and then wanting a beer. And then I thought, no, absolutely, I can imagine getting out of a rehab program and wanting a beer and getting somebody to go with me.
Oh yeah, the other person would, the one coming out of rehab would. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It had never crossed my mind. So I'm glad he brought
But
that
I
up.
couldn't imagine me taking that person out.
I could imagine you right now offering me a pinch of snuff outside.
You asked me for some here a while back. What'd I say?
I never asked you for dip.
Remember here a while back?
No.
Yeah.
No.
No, you said, let me shake that can one time.
Well, yeah, because
And I wouldn't even give it to you then.
I do remember that.
Yeah.
That's muscle memory, habitual stuff.
Yeah, and I wouldn't even give it to you then. I don't know if people stuff I wouldn't take myself.
So Stephen has messaged us earlier, and Stephen, I didn't forget about you. I was just waiting for a prime time to bring this up. So he starts off. He says it doesn't matter when he was born. What matters is that he was born. Of course, that was talking about Christ's Christmas, when the actual day was. He said, spiritual growth, asking God, am I the same as I was yesterday? Or am I more like Christ than I was yesterday? And so we kind of talked about that this morning too. At the end of the day, are you the kind of person, when you look back at your day, are you the kind of person you would like? Is another way to phrase this. And so, Joe, at the end of the day, when you're laying in bed, can you look at what you've done that entire day and say, this is what God truly wanted me to do, and I fulfilled His purpose to a T? Or are you like me, at least, for the most part, and look back and I say, I see right here, should have done this different, could have done this different. God wanted this, I did this.
Yes, that's the way I see it.
I think that our goal, and that doesn't mean like, I'm beating myself up, I shoulda. It is something to acknowledge and to look out for tomorrow. Well, God told me to do this. I wanted to do this, so I chose this. Well, when God calls again, let's go this way. I talk all the time about how the Spirit will tell me to do something, and I'm always so nervous, like, what if these people take this a weird way? And I told you, I was in Food City, and I was looking at, I think, bacon or something, and there was two people over there looking at a ham, and they were like trying to find the smallest ham they could get because they had like $15 between them. And they were talking about splitting the ham. And in that moment, it was, you have however much in your pocket, give it to them, and just walk away. Don't even say what it's for. But I didn't. And so I went throughout the store, and I saw them again, and I still didn't do it. And then we were at the checkout, and they were behind us, and I could have just as easily been like, hey, put this to theirs. But I didn't do it. They were parked beside us, and I still didn't do it. And I told Savannah, and she said, you fool. She said, you remember all those times I tell you, hey, we're going to do this? That's what I'm responding to. But it's so hard for me to do that. But I can see that, and I can say, okay, next time I'm going to do better. Well, next time it comes around, I still don't do better. But God is putting that top of my mind because it's kind of, He highlights issues because He wants you to work on these things. And by work, He really wants you to stop working on it and just let Him take those things.
I was going to say, so what's the real issue there?
Yeah, it's disobedience.
Yeah, but what's the real issue? It's trust.
Yeah.
It's because when you were saying in your mind, well, how's these people going to take this or that or the other? Remember, He's always working on both ends. And do we trust Him or not?
Yeah.
Do we know His voice? When He speaks, do we know that's Him? Or do we just look at people and say, well, that's weird, they just got one thing? Then you could really get in trouble just trying to be friendly on your own. You really stir up trouble in today's times. if you know it's his voice, it just comes down to one thing.
Yeah.
Do I fully trust him or not?
And that really has eaten at me since
Yes.
Thanksgiving.
It's a heavy weight.
It was something small. I mean, it wouldn't have broke my bank. It wouldn't have caused us not to eat, but it would have helped them out tremendously.
Well, the first thing he asked the disciples to do was not be filleted alive or drugged by horses or whatever. They went through a myriad of things before they got to the point to where they were crucified upside down, skinned alive, dragged by horses.
And so that's where I brought up earlier at the beginning of it's easy for me to say I'm not afraid of death right now,
Yeah.
but I'm afraid to give somebody $20.
You know what still eats at me is that guy there at the coffee shop that day. I was going to give
Yep.
him that podcast card.
Yep.
And he done made it across the road, and I went out the door, and he done made it across the road, down the road a little bit. And I come back and I said, well, he's done down the road.
And what Jonathan say?
Johnson said, I'm glad you ain't trying to save me or something.
No, he said, boy, I'm glad when Jesus was going to save me, I didn't cross the road.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what it said. And you know, me turning back, that eats me alive.
Sure.
I look back on that all the time.
I think that
Without even you bringing that up, I still look
You
back on
think
that.
we'll see those things on that day?
Paul saw Stephen getting stoned all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so we talk about these things not to hurt one another, not to relive these horrible experiences, but I think partially it's to share that, you know, we're in the same ride.
Yeah.
But also it's to have admonition from one another, because I'm not going to tell you that what you did was fine. I probably will tell you that's what I would do, but that's not good.
That means it's the wrong thing.
Yeah.
But we're called to admonish one another,
Yes.
which is basically, this isn't the technical definition, so don't quote me on this. It's to say, you know, what you did was wrong, but do better next time. Let's build up after that.
Mm.
And so I've got to do that to myself too, because, you know, hey, it is, if I see the people again, it's going to be too late.
When we hear that,
Because you know what? If I see them again, my heart wants to say, here's $100.
Yeah.
Buy you a big old ham. Moment's over. What's
Yes.
that going to do for me?
Yeah.
when we hear that little voice, follow plumb through on it.
Mhm.
Follow plumb through on it. You know,
Absolutely.
don't stop halfway. Follow it plumb through.
Yeah, it's like if you were a little kid and let's say you're 8 or 10 years old and your parent, if you have a good parent, your good parent tells you to do something. Well, I don't know about in today's time. This may not be a good analogy. in
Yeah,
today's
you've
time.
used it before. It was good.
But you just do it,
Mhm.
right? You don't think about it. You just do it because why? Because you
Okay.
have 100% trust in that parent,
Yeah.
and so that's what we're really talking about here. Is do we really trust our Father?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Do we believe that He's our Father? Do we believe He's good? And do we trust in what He says?
Yeah.
And if we do, then we're just going to do what He says without thinking.
We revert too quickly back to our monkey brain. And that's not like an evolution we came from monkeys, but
I'm like, tell me you're not.
in our
Where am I going
flesh,
with this?
in our flesh, we behave animalistically.
Mhm.
We go after wants. We
Yeah.
pursue what makes us feel good,
Them worldly things.
and so we revert back to that in our sin. God gives us, honestly, He gives us knowledge, and we get responsibility with that knowledge. And so now we can do the same things, but now that we have knowledge, now it's bad because we have the knowledge and the responsibility that comes with that. We're no longer innocent babies running around a garden. We're sinful men that are naked. What's the first thing we do, Joe?
Hide.
We hide.
Oh yeah.
Well, this was a weird podcast. I say that I feel like most podcasts, but shoot, we were sitting there talking.
Started talking about Christmas.
Well, we thought we was going to
presents.
talk about Christmas whenever we were younger and how that
Then we
went
got
down.
on death.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Christmas and death are very closely linked.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
really are.
Well, yeah.
I tell people that Easter and Christmas are like the national championship and Super Bowl of preaching, and I don't get sports references, so I assume, but that's really what it is, and they play so close together, and even in the gifts of the wise men, I'm not going to say 3 wise men because I believe there was more. There were 3 gifts. That's symbolic of the life of Christ that goes forward. So, what was life like? What was Christmas like for a young Joseph Diebel in Detroit City?
Well, when we was with Michael's dad, it was a regular kid's Christmas. You had all your presents, and everything. Mama didn't let us open them, till, Christmas Day. At that time, Mama wasn't going to church or nothing, so it's just a kid's Christmas, But then after Mama had separated, we kind of didn't have the Christmases, like we did. But Mama had started going to church.
Mm-hmm.
And we had Christmases, at church and, stuff like that. And
How much was Jesus talked about in your Detroit Christmases?
before Mama separated, hardly none. After, quite a bit.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
We've taken.
But then, that there didn't last maybe 2 or 3 years till we moved down here.
Mhm.
And then Mama got away from it again, and
It's
and that's where I went hog wild.
not to beat up too much on the facts, but very few experience Christmas in the way that we should.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with presents. I think that's a great way to show love and to show that you care for people. But when the focus is on decorations and presents and going here doing this, going here doing this, going here doing this, I think it loses all meaning.
Yeah. Because that ain't what it's about. No.
And that's not to say that everything you're doing for Christmas you need to stop doing. I'm saying we need to put God above all
Absolutely.
that.
Yeah.
And so it's great. Listen, dude, I do my very best to give people stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I knock it out of the park. Sometimes I match up a gift that was like, God made this gift for this person.
Mm-hmm.
But I personally, I don't put forth enough Christ in what I'm doing on Christmas. I get caught up in the holiday, not the holy day.
Yeah, without that Christmas Day, without him being born, where would we be?
We would be counted among men most miserable, as they say. But I'm glad to hear that you've had a good time. Glad to hear that you got a little bit of churching in with the folk.
Yeah.
Over Christmas. We had a great old time. Girls are loving it. Excited next year to have Arrow involved, and we'll keep going. Philip, you got anything else?
Nope.
Steven, you got anything else? Nope. Joe, you got anything else? There's like a 7-second delay if he is participating.
No.
Folks, it has been 101 episodes of the Blessing and Cursing podcast, and we appreciate you sticking with us for each and every one of them. Really, we say this often, we say this a lot, but we wouldn't be here without you guys. We would have stopped very quickly, because I don't know about you, Philip, but you have to because you edit, but I don't listen to our podcasts after they get recorded, because I don't want to hear myself.
No, I listen to them all the time. I go back.
Do you
I
listen to the
learn
ones
a
you're
lot.
on?
No, not the ones I'm on, no.
See, what am I supposed to do? But we appreciate that you do listen, because that tells us that what we're putting out here is worthwhile. And we do our level best to make sure that it's not just us talking, but we are putting forth whatever God wants for us to talk about. And this coming up year, we've kind of talked about some things. You see, we're always trying to change things to make it aesthetically pleasing, because we want you to be entertained while you're being informed. We don't want it to go so far into the entertainment that it loses the value of Christ that we're trying to put out there, but we don't want it to be so monotone that it's just a monk chanting in a sanctuary kind of thing, which I know that's not what we're doing. But folks, we do appreciate it. You can leave us a review on any of the platforms that we're on. All of the podcast apps, on YouTube, on Facebook. The reviews are not for our benefit, but it's to help the algorithms to find us and to show us to people. The higher rating, the more interaction that we have on comments and ratings, help people to find this podcast whenever they search Christian podcast. It helps us to pop up. On Facebook, it helps us to show up on people's dashes. But the greatest thing you can do is to share this with your family and friends. Every platform has a way to share the video, the link, whatever it may be, and what that does is that introduces us to new people. People out there that may be in some of the similar situations that we've been in that need to understand the joy that Christ can bring. It could be to some shepherds and fishermen out there that think they're not worthy.
Absolutely.
Or it could be to some wise men that need to understand that they are not. They need to be humbled, let's say. But regardless, we want to be able to put forth Christ in everything that we do. And so that's our prayer for this year, and we would love to have you pray with us that more people can experience the gospel and that we can continue to do what God has set out for us.
Anybody can experience the gospel.
And so if you have any questions or comments, there's several ways you can reach us. We already mentioned comments before. You can comment below this video and join our brother Stephen on there with anything that you've got to add. You can message us directly on Facebook. Philip and I both get those sent to our account, so we're able to read and respond to those. You can email us at blessingandcursing3019 at gmail.com. And we'd love to hear from you. If you've got any questions that you want to ask us, either about our walks, things we've experienced, you want us to clarify some things, or you just want to get our thoughts on things, we'll do our level best to give you those answers. What I encourage people is, I know at least whenever I was in church younger, I didn't spend a lot of time there, but I was there a few times. There's questions I was always afraid to ask.
Yes.
Because there was always the mindset of, oh, well, you know the story of this, well, I don't. Or you know this, well, I don't. If you've got questions like that, you can ask us. We can absolutely answer them anonymously. And if it's a question that we don't understand, we have a multitude of very intelligent friends we can ask to get you those answers.
That's the reason I go back and watch podcasts, especially the early ones of you and Philip.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of my answers get filled through them early podcasts.
Well, good. I'm glad to hear it.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what we got for you, folks. Join us next year. Philip, have we got a guest lined up for the first episode of the year?
Yes.
We've got a guest for the first of the year. So, folks, we love you. Thank you so much. God bless you.